Picture the year 4200 BC. The Sumerians have just begun pressing wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets, the first writing in human history. But 200 miles east, across the Karun River in what is now southwestern Iran, another civilization is already doing it independently. Their script is called Proto-Elamite. We still cannot fully read it. To this day, after 120 years of excavation, the Proto-Elamite tablets at Susa remain one of the last undeciphered writing systems on Earth. This is the world before, a world where Mesopotamia did not stand alone. While Uruk was building its walls, the city of Susa was already a temple complex on a plain between two rivers, the Karkay and the Des, at the foot of the Zagros Mountains. The Elamites controlled something Mesopotamia desperately needed: tin, copper, lapis lazuli, and the mountain trade routes that connected to Afghanistan and the Indus Valley. Sumer had grain. Elam had metal, and metal made armies. But here is what nobody tells you: the Elamites were not one people. They were a confederation, Susa in the lowlands, and Shan in the highlands near modern Shiraz, and a network of smaller kingdoms welded together by a single language unrelated to anything else on Earth. Linguists call Elamite a language isolate. It has no proven relatives, no Indo-European root, no Semitic family. It simply appears fully formed in the historical record, as if a civilization fell out of the sky onto the Iranian plateau. And we will get to the artifact that proves they were here for far longer than anyone is comfortable admitting. That is where it gets counterintuitive. Around 2700 BC, Elam enters recorded history with a single sentence carved into Sumerian stone. The king of Kish marched east and claimed to have conquered Elam. He did not. Within 2 generations, an Elamite king named Enatum of Awan turned the tables and sacked the Sumerian heartland. The pattern was set. For the next 2 millennia, Mesopotamia and Elam would trade blows like 2 boxers, neither one able to knock out. If this is landing, save this video. You are going to want to come back to this one, because what comes next changes how you read every Bible map, every textbook chapter on the ancient Near East. The Golden Age came in the 13th century BC under a king named Untashnaparisha. He ruled from approximately 1275 to 1240 BC, and he did something audacious. He built an entire new capital from scratch, a holy city called Dur-Untash, today known as Chagha Zanbil. At its heart, he raised a ziggurat that was originally 53 meters tall with 5 stepped levels dedicated to the Elamite god Inshushinak. It was the largest ziggurat ever constructed, larger than anything in Babylon, larger than anything in Ur. It still stands today 20 kilometers southeast of Susa, the best preserved ziggurat on Earth, and it was UNESCO's first Iranian World Heritage Site in 1979. But Untashnaparisha is not the king they remember. The king they remember is Shutruk-Nahant. In 1158 BC, he marched on Babylon. He did not just defeat it, he stripped it. He carried home the statue of Marduk, Babylon's chief god, the spiritual heart of the empire. He carried home the obelisk of Manishtushu. He carried home the victory stele of Naram-Sin, a masterpiece carved 300 years before the Trojan War. And he carried home the 7-foot black diorite pillar inscribed with the code of Hammurabi. He brought them all to Susa. He stacked them in the courtyard of the Inshushinak temple like trophies in a championship case. And on the code of Hammurabi, on the most famous legal document in human history, he had his own name carved over Hammurabi's, erasing it, replacing it, claiming the law itself as Elamite spoils. Drop in the comments, have you ever defaced something to claim it? Because Shutruk-Nahant did it on a global scale in stone 3,000 years ago, and those carvings are still there. You can see the scraped patch where Hammurabi's words used to be in the Louvre, where the stele has sat since a French team found it in December 1901 in the ruins of Susa. For 3 centuries after Shutruk-Nahant, Elam shrank, recovered, fragmented, and reformed. Kings rose and fell. The tomb chambers under the Acropolis of Susa filled with bronze sarcophagi, gold diadems, weapons inlaid with electrum. Then came 647 BC. The Assyrian king Ashurbanipal was the most ruthless monarch the ancient Near East had ever produced. He could read cuneiform, rare for a king, and his library at Nineveh would later give us the Epic of Gilgamesh. But Ashurbanipal had a grudge. Decades of Elamite raids, Elamite plots, Elamite sheltering of his rebel brother. So he marched on Susa with the explicit goal not of conquest, but of erasure. What he did there, he recorded himself. The text survives on the walls of his palace in Nineveh. Susa, the great holy city, abode of their gods, seat of their mysteries, I conquered. I entered its palaces, I opened their treasuries. I destroyed the ziggurat of Susa. I smashed its shining copper horns. I leveled the temples of Elam to the ground. I scattered the bones of their ancient kings, kings who had not feared my fathers, toward Assyria. I sowed salt upon their fields. He smashed the tombs. He dragged the bones of dead kings into the sunlight. He carried back to Nineveh the statue of the Elamite goddess Nanya, a statue the Elamites had themselves stolen from Uruk 1,500 years earlier. The destruction was so total that for centuries, scholars believed Elam simply ended in 647 BC. It did not, and here is where the story gets impossible. Because in 1901, the same year the Code of Hammurabi emerged from the Susa mound, French archaeologist Jacques de Morgan dug into the Acropolis and found royal tombs that should not have existed. Vaulted brick chambers undisturbed, bronze sarcophagi sealed. Inside one of them lay the body of an Elamite king named in the inscriptions as Shooter Nahant, buried with a golden diadem, silver vessels, ceremonial daggers, and a cylinder seal of pure lapis lazuli. The pottery and inscriptions dated to the late 7th and early 6th centuries BC, after Ashurbanipal's salt and fire. A king had been buried in royal splendor in the city Ashurbanipal swore he had erased. An empire was meant to be dead, and someone was still putting kings into the ground with crowns on their skulls. What happened in those silent decades between Ashurbanipal's destruction and the rise of Persia? This is the gap historians cannot fill. We know that by 539 BC, when Cyrus the Great founded the Achaemenid Persian Empire, Susa was already there waiting. Cyrus did not build it. Darius the Great rebuilt it. He raised the Apadana, the great columned audience hall on the same Acropolis where the Elamite kings were buried. He used Elamite scribes. Elamite was one of the 3 official languages of the Persian Empire, carved alongside Old Persian and Akkadian on the Behistun inscription. The Persians did not replace Elam. They absorbed it. The administrative tablets found at Persepolis, over 30,000 of them, are written in Elamite. The royal road that connected Sardis to Susa, the road Herodotus describes, ran on Elamite logistics. When Alexander the Great captured Susa in 331 BC, he found over 40,000 talents of silver in its treasury, more wealth than any city in the known world. That treasury existed because the Elamites had built it. So why have you never heard of them? Because the empire that erased them, Assyria, wrote the histories that survived. Because the Bible mentions Elam only in passing, as the homeland of one of Abraham's foes, then nothing. Because the Greeks called everything east of the Tigris simply Persia. Because the Elamite language died and took with it almost every voice the Elamites ever had. Out of 2,000 years of literature, we have administrative records, a handful of royal inscriptions, and silence. And yet, every time a courtroom invokes an eye for an eye, every time a constitution traces itself back to written law, every time a legal scholar opens a book on the origin of justice, they are touching a tradition that survives because Elamites stole the stone, dragged it home, and buried it in a city Ashurbanipal could not finish destroying. The Code of Hammurabi was preserved by the people history forgot. CTA 1213 Min. If forgotten empires fascinate you, if you want to know which civilizations history rewrote, which kings were buried alive in their own tombs, which scripts we still cannot read, subscribe and hit the bell icon. New hidden history every day. But that is only half the story. The next part is where most people get this completely wrong, because there is one Elamite royal tomb that was found sealed, and what was inside it does not match any known burial practice in the entire ancient Near East. Outro 1315 Min. History does not remember the loudest. It remembers the loudest survivors. Babylon survives because Babylon was conquered by conquerors who wrote about it. Elam was conquered by Assyrians who wanted it forgotten, and by Persians who quietly inherited everything it had built. 2,000 years of civilization reduced to footnotes because no one carried the story forward. That is the lesson the Elamite tombs at Susa teach us, 3,000 years after they were sealed. Greatness is not enough. Innovation is not enough. Wealth is not enough. What survives is what someone somewhere chooses to remember. The Elamites built the largest ziggurat in history, fought the Assyrians to a standstill, gave Persia its capital, and rescued the world's first written law. And we forgot them anyway. So the next time you hear the phrase, an eye for an eye, remember the king who chiseled his name over Hammurabi's. Remember the tomb chamber that held a crown after the empire was supposedly dead. Remember Susa. If this hit my video on the lost civilization of the Indus Valley, the trading partners who supplied Elam with lapis lazuli and disappeared just as completely, will make even more sense now. Their script is still undeciphered too, and what they left behind is just as strange. The Elamites ruled an empire for 2,000 years, longer than the gap between us and the Roman Empire, and almost no one remembers them. From their capital at Susa in southwestern Iran, they fought Mesopotamia to a standstill, sacked Babylon, stole the Code of Hammurabi, and built the largest ziggurat in human history at Chagha-Zanbil. Then the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal tried to erase them in 647 BC, and almost succeeded. But the royal tombs discovered at Susa in 1901 tell a different story. Kings buried in gold and bronze decades after the empire was supposed to be dead. This is the story of the forgotten rival of Mesopotamia, the empire that gave Persia its first capital and saved the world's first written law from being lost forever. 00, 00 the stolen code 00, 45 the world before 03, 00 on Tashnapparisha and Chagha Zanbil 05, 00 Shutruk Nahant Saks Babylon 06, 30 Ashurbanipal's Revenge 08, 30 The Impossible Tombs 10, 00 Why History Forgot Elam 12, 30 Subscribe for More Hidden History 13, 30 The Lesson of Susa Ancient History Lost Civilization Elamites Susa Mesopotamia Archaeology Forgotten Empire. Script complete 12 15-minute target hit with a personal appeal hook, the eye for an eye phrase, front-loading a shocking artifact in the first 2 seconds, all retention beats placed, and an end screen lead-in to a related Indus Valley video to drive watch time chaining.